So how exactly does a secret billionaire heiress manage to completely dismantle this ruthless, hyper-elite university hierarchy using literally nothing but a dusty farm, like an insane amount of strategic patience and a vintage leather satchel?
It sounds like a movie pitch, honestly.
Right. I mean, we're getting straight into it today. We've pulled together this stack of incredibly rich source material for you, mostly centering on Amanda Park's phenomenal book, The Heiress of the Harvest.
Which you might also see referred to in some of our supplementary research as the Invisible Heiress and the Golden Boy, or Roots of Legacy.
Yeah, exactly. And on the surface, the premise might sound like the exact setup for a Sunday afternoon campus drama. You got the quiet library girl, the universally beloved golden boy, and this campus that's basically ruled by vicious legacy
It
elites.
feels very soapy at first glance.
It really does. But that packaging is deeply deceptive because what this material actually delivers for you is this masterclass in resource allocation, asymmetric social warfare, and the undeniable structural power of deep authenticity.
Yeah, it's really a story about how you systematically take apart an empire without ever raising your voice.
Which is just wild to think about.
It is. And, the deceptive packaging of the story is exactly what makes the strategic underlying mechanics so effective.
Right.
To really grasp the architecture of what Parks is illustrating for us, we need a conceptual framework. So let's use the central metaphor of the oak tree.
Okay, I love this analogy.
Yeah, picture a massive, centuries-old oak tree sitting in the middle of an open field. In a highly superficial, highly digitized world, human attention naturally drifts upward.
We look at the top.
Exactly. Everyone obsesses over the branches. They look at the sprawling canopy, the leaves catching the sunlight, the visible reach and height of the tree.
Which makes sense because it's what you can see.
Right. And if we map that onto our modern professional and social ecosystems, those branches represent the immediate markers of status.
Like your social media metrics.
Yes, your social media, your legacy surname, the designer labels you wear, your glossy PR wins, your job title.
Basically the exact things that look phenomenal on a university gala invitation or a, highly curated Instagram feed.
Precisely. It's highly visible, easily quantifiable capital. But here is the biological reality of that oak tree.
Yeah.
The branches are actually the most vulnerable part of the organism.
Because they're exposed.
Exactly. When a Category 5 hurricane rolls through, the flashy, brittle trees with those massive canopies and shallow roots, they just snap in half.
Wow, yeah.
The only reason the oak tree survives extreme violent pressure is because of the invisible, deeply unglamorous network of roots fighting through dense rock, heavy clay, and underground water tables.
So the real work is happening where nobody can see it.
Completely in the dark. That underground structural integrity is cultivated through time, pressure, and biological resistance.
It's not a quick process.
No, not at all. It involves intricate mycorrhizal networks, these fungal systems that share resources and communicate stress signals entirely away from the naked eye.
That is fascinating.
And in human terms, this is the invisible infrastructure of a person's character, their historical knowledge, and their habitual discipline. The roots are what actually survive the storm.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because our mission today is to figure out exactly how you can cultivate those deep roots in an increasingly surface-level world. We really have to look closely at the two central figures who operate completely outside this normal, highly curated campus ecosystem.
Let's start with Annalise.
Right, Annalise Thorne. She is our invisible heiress. Our sources describe her as this exceptionally brilliant student with mousy caramel skin and a cloud of chestnut curls.
And she actively avoids the spotlight.
Totally. She goes out of her way to sit in the very back of her Calculus the Third class, actively avoiding eye contact with everyone.
But her defining psychological architecture stems from a profound trauma.
Yeah, this is the really heavy part. When she was just 14 years old, her parents died in a horrific plane crash.
Just unimaginably tragic.
And overnight, she inherited a massive billionaire-level agricultural fortune.
And, the inheritance of immense capital at that age usually dictates a very specific developmental trajectory.
It usually ruins people, honestly.
While the capital normally acts as an insulator against reality, but Annalise takes the absolute opposite route.
She doesn't buy a penthouse or a sports car.
No, instead of using that wealth to buy superficial comfort or integrate into high society safety nets, she retreats to the quiet, grueling, grounding life of her grandparents' dusty farm.
She just walks away from the elite bubble.
She deliberately hides her wealth to live an incredibly simple life. And the physical tether to her past is her late father's vintage leather satchel.
Which she carries literally everywhere.
Exactly.
And then on the exact opposite end of the campus visibility spectrum, we have Chrisian.
The golden boy.
Yes, universally known as the Golden Boy. He's tall, athletic, chocolate-skinned, and he holds the ultimate branch-level title, Student Body President.
He's the peak of the visible canopy.
On paper, yeah. He has a perfect SAT score, a flawless GPA. He looks like the apex of the elite campus hierarchy.
But the reality is much more complex.
Because he holds a completely different set of foundational values. He didn't inherit his position. He fought his way out of absolute systemic poverty.
Which is key. He is surrounded by generational wealth, but he is not of it.
Right.
Because he knows what it costs to actually survive, he possesses this finely tuned radar for authenticity.
He can spot a fake from a mile away.
He values grueling hard work
Yeah.
and just sees right through the transactional, superficial networking of his peers.
Which has to be incredibly lonely for him.
It creates a profound sense of isolation at the top of the hierarchy. And it's precisely why his attention constantly drifts to the back of that Calc 3rd class to watch Annalise.
He sees past the plain packaging.
He recognizes something fundamentally different in her complete lack of performance.
And that lack of performance isn't just her being shy. There is a deeply strategic element to Annalise's plainness. It's this concept of weaponized obscurity.
A great term.
Right. She isn't passively hiding in the back of the classroom. She is actively using her plain exterior as a psychological filter. By presenting herself as this scholarship student with zero social capital, she effectively keeps all the superficial status seekers away.
It's brilliant.
If a person only cares about the branches, like the status, the wealth, the connections, they will never look twice at Annalise.
She designed her entire existence so that only someone willing to dig for the roots would ever bother to engage with her.
It's just a brilliant mechanism for information asymmetry.
She knows everything about the ecosystem, but the ecosystem knows absolutely nothing about her.
And this all culminates in a sequence the text frames as the harvest test.
Right, when Chrisian finally approaches her.
Yeah, they finally connect. And it starts gently, a quiet conversation in a greenhouse, a first date at a dim, candlelit bistro, completely removed from the campus social scene.
But the true filter is applied when she invites him back to the family farm for the weekend.
And she explicitly warns him, this is not a vacation.
She tells him it's going to involve dirt, sweat, and manual labor.
Because she is testing his underlying fundamentals. And when Chrisian arrives at the farm, he completely bypasses the typical social protocols. He doesn't walk up to Silas, Annalise's grandfather, and offer this slick, polished politician's handshake while making small talk about the weather.
No, not at all.
He takes off his jacket, rolls up his sleeves, and immediately offers to fix a leaning timber fence right there in the fading Friday evening light.
And that is merely the preamble.
Huh.
The defining moment occurs the next morning.
Oh, man. This 6:20 a.m. wake-up call.
Exactly. At 6 a.m., Chrisian is out in the fields wearing a faded flannel shirt. He spends 4 consecutive hours hauling incredibly heavy cedar posts and hammering wire alongside Silas.
4 hours.
And he lets his knuckles scrape and bleed. He lets his boots cake with mud. He doesn't complain, he doesn't check his phone, and he doesn't ask for a break.
He just works.
Yes. This is a textbook demonstration of what evolutionary biologists and sociologists call costly signaling.
I really want to drill into that concept because anyone on campus can easily look at Chrisian and say, oh, I respect hard work.
Words are entirely free.
Exactly. A legacy student who wants to look well-rounded for an internship can mimic the language of a blue-collar work ethic. They can throw on a Carhartt jacket to go to an artisanal coffee shop.
Precisely. In evolutionary biology, the concept of costly signaling, which is often associated with Zahavi's handicap principle, explains how organisms prove their biological fitness through traits or behaviors that are deeply expensive to maintain.
Like a peacock.
Exactly. A peacock's massive, colorful tail makes it highly vulnerable to predators. It requires immense metabolic energy to grow.
So it's a huge liability.
Yes. Therefore, a vibrant tail is a signal of health that simply cannot be faked by a weak bird.
Wow.
In human sociology and economics, time and physical pain are our finite, expensive resources.
Right.
A status seeker focused on optics might pretend to be rustic for a social media post, but they cannot and will not sacrifice 4 hours of a Saturday morning to endure physical pain and bleed over a timber fence just to help an old man.
It's too expensive for them.
The physical toll of the labor is the cost that proves the signal is genuine. Christian's behavior is a costly signal, proving his internal values perfectly align with Annalise's underground roots.
I look at this dynamic through the lens of the stock market.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, Annalise is essentially a deep value stock. Her balance sheet is incredible, her fundamentals are rock solid, but she is completely ignored by the broader market because her packaging is unglamorous.
There's no PR team pumping up her value.
Right. And Christian, meanwhile, is the high-growth tech stock. He has all the visibility, all the momentum. The entire campus wants a piece of his equity.
But he's a savvy enough investor to look past her plain packaging.
He sees her intrinsic fundamentals. But wait, I have to ask. If she acts like a deep value stock forever, hiding her true worth, doesn't she just risk permanently dying in obscurity?
It is a risk.
Because if the broader market never actually looks at the balance sheet, the stock stays depressed forever. How do you ensure the right people eventually notice your roots without risking total isolation?
Well, it is a significant risk, but it relies on a sociological law of gravity. Undeniable authenticity exerts a pull.
A pull, like magnetism.
Yes. When you possess massive structural integrity in an environment completely devoid of it, you create a vacuum. You do not need the entire market to notice you.
Just the right buyers.
You only need the specific market players who possess actual long-term capital. Christian was not looking for a highly leveraged, flashy asset. He had spent 3 years at that university looking for something real.
So her hiding actually helped him find her.
Annalise's obscurity didn't hide her from him, it highlighted her. In a room full of people desperately screaming for attention, the single person sitting quietly in the back becomes the most intriguing variable in the room.
But authenticity doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? When you introduce a highly authentic, unbothered player into a hyper-superficial ecosystem, it acts as a mirror.
And a very threatening mirror.
Exactly. It's incredibly threatening to the people who have built their entire existence on artificial status. Which brings us to the shift from relationship building to social warfare.
Enter Vanessa.
Yes, Vanessa. She is the dean's student assistant, and she basically represents the walking, talking immune system of the campus hierarchy.
She is the ultimate enforcer of the branches.
She trades exclusively in the currency of status, access, and visibility. And she is fundamentally enraged that the campus golden boy has chosen to invest his time in the invisible library girl.
Vanessa perceives Annalise as a glitch in the ecosystem.
Like a virus she needs to eradicate.
In Vanessa's mind, high-status players like Christian are only supposed to interact with other high-status players. Annalise's very presence destabilizes the hierarchy.
So she decides to do something about it.
Vanessa decides to reassert the rules of the ecosystem in the most public forum available, the university gala.
We have to talk about this scene, the gala attack. Annalise arrives at this high society black tie event, and she undergoes this stunning transformation.
She sheds the obscure packaging.
She steps completely out of her mousy, invisible shell. She's wearing this flowing emerald silk gown. She has a single diamond clip catching the light in her chestnut curls. And she absolutely stuns the entire room.
And Vanessa sees an opportunity for a public execution of Annalise's character.
It's so vicious.
She hijacks the event's audio-visual system and projects a leaked photograph onto the main ballroom wall.
It's the picture of Christian.
Yes, a picture of Christian covered in mud, working at the farm. Vanessa openly mocks them over the microphone for playing house in the dirt.
She's trying to drag him down.
She is attempting to strip Christian of his high-status aura by associating him with manual labor.
But she doesn't stop there. She drops what she thinks is this nuclear social bomb.
The county records.
Right. She reveals to the entire gala that she has been digging into county records, and she exposes the fact that Annalise's dusty farm is actually sitting on the most valuable, undeveloped land in the entire state.
She broadcasts that Annalise is secretly sitting on a billionaire trust fund.
Vanessa's whole objective is to paint Annalise as a massive fraud. She wants to frame her as this wealthy, out-of-touch elite who is just cosplaying as a poverty-stricken farm girl to get attention.
She expects Annalise to completely crumble, to cry and to flee the ballroom in absolute disgrace.
She expects a total meltdown.
She expects a total nervous system collapse. But to understand why Annalise does not collapse, we have to examine the psychological mechanics of shame.
Oh, this is fascinating.
Shame is not something that can simply be injected into a person against their will. It is a collaborative emotion.
Wait, collaborative?
It requires the victim's active consent to function. Think of it like a currency exchange.
Okay.
If I try to hand you a counterfeit bill and you recognize it's fake and refuse to accept it, The transaction fails.
The money is worthless.
The counterfeit money holds no purchasing power. Neurologically, shame triggers the pain centers of the brain, specifically the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex, but only if you accept the premise of the insult.
So Vanessa expects Annalise to feel ashamed of her wealth and her perceived deception.
But Annalise simply refuses to consent to the transaction.
She stands her ground right there in this emerald gown. Her voice doesn't even waver.
Not at all.
She clearly states to this dead silent ballroom that she lives on the farm because it is the only place in the world that feels real to her.
She completely owns it.
She explains that she works the land because her grandparents instilled in her this undeniable truth that human value comes from what you can build and sustain with your own hands, not what you happen to inherit on a piece of paper from a tragic accident.
She didn't hide the money to trick anyone.
Right. She ignored the money to see if she could stand on her own 2 feet without it.
She instantly, cleanly recontextualizes the narrative.
No apology.
She doesn't apologize, she doesn't try to explain away the trust fund, and she doesn't even attack Vanessa in return. She simply states her foundational truth, which immediately highlights the sheer superficiality of Vanessa's attack.
It totally backfires.
By refusing the shame, the emotional payload of the attack bounces off Annalise and reflects directly back onto Vanessa, who suddenly looks incredibly petty and vindictive in front of all her peers.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. If we look at Vanessa's tactic, she basically tried to launch a corporate smear campaign.
Yes.
She tried to aggressively manage the PR, but she completely failed to realize her target was immune to public opinion.
Immune to the branches.
But wait, if Annalise is truly so unbothered by the branches, if she genuinely doesn't care about campus status or high society, why did she show up in a breathtaking emerald silk gown and a diamond clip?
Fair question.
I mean, she didn't wear denim overalls to the gala. She played the optics game perfectly. Yeah. Didn't she bait Vanessa into that confrontation by showing up looking like absolute royalty?
Well, there's a massive crucial distinction between being a slave to optics and being a master of them.
Okay, what's the difference?
Annalise does not derive her self-worth from the gown, but she fully respects the rules of the arena she is stepping into. By wearing the silk and the diamond, she is communicating a very specific message to the hierarchy.
Which is?
I am perfectly capable of playing your game and dominating it, but I actively choose the dirt.
Oh, wow.
It establishes absolute dominance. She didn't bait Vanessa, she simply dropped her camouflage.
And Vanessa couldn't handle it.
Exactly. When Annalise revealed her capacity to outshine the elites on their own terms, Vanessa's deep-seated insecurity forced her to attack. Annalise didn't need a counterattack strategy. She just let Vanessa's own momentum carry her right off the cliff.
But when you embarrass a bureaucratic enforcer like Vanessa, they don't retreat.
They escalate.
They escalate. Social warfare morphs into academic sabotage, and the stakes become, like, existential.
Exactly. Vanessa realizes she cannot win a battle of narrative authenticity, so she pivots to manipulating institutional systems.
We move to the Advanced Agricultural Economics final exam.
A critical moment.
This single test is worth 50% of their entire final grade, and Vanessa leverages her privileged access as the dean's student assistant to steal the official answer key.
Her plan is brutally simple.
She plans to slip the stolen key into Annalise's vintage leather satchel, the one physical tether she has to her late father, and then flag the professor during the exam.
It is a calculated trap designed to trigger an automatic institutional response.
She waits until Annalise is physically distracted.
Yes, helping another student across the aisle before the exam even begins. Vanessa slips the folded paper into the side pocket of the satchel.
And then waits.
Then, 30 minutes into the dead silent exam, Vanessa raises her hand and loudly accuses Annalise of repeatedly checking a cheat sheet hidden in her bag.
Which is just so bold. And the professor proctoring the exam is known as a stern, unforgiving disciplinarian.
He doesn't play around?
No. He calls Annalise to the front of the room. 50 students are just staring at her. He orders her to open the bag, and he reaches directly into the side pocket.
He pulls out a folded piece of paper.
And Vanessa is basically glowing with anticipation. But as the professor unfolds the document, his expression shifts from anger to profound confusion.
Because the paper he pulls out is not the stolen answer key.
No, it is a formal, university letterhead academic integrity report.
Yes.
It is signed by Vanessa herself, dated the previous afternoon, and it details Vanessa's own explicit plan to steal the key and plant it.
And stapled securely to the back of this confession is the stolen answer key itself.
The reversal is absolute and instantaneous, but we really have to analyze the mechanics of how Annalise orchestrated this.
It wasn't luck.
No, it was the result of habitual discipline. The source text makes it very clear that Annalise has this unbreakable routine. Before every major event, she methodically checks every pocket of her late father's bag.
It is a grounding ritual to calm her nerves.
So she discovered the planted key before the exam even started.
But finding the key is one thing. The sequence of actions she takes next is where the sheer brilliance lies.
Because she doesn't panic.
She doesn't panic. She doesn't confront Vanessa privately. She immediately calls Christian, explicitly invoking his formal authority as the student body president. They team up. Together, they march into the campus security office, pull the CCTV footage to definitively confirm Vanessa stole the key from the dean's desk. Then they draft the fake integrity report and swap the papers in the bag.
Wait, think about the context here for a second. This is a final exam worth half her grade.
It's massive.
Let's compare this to a chess match, where you deliberately leave your queen exposed, hoping your opponent takes the bait so you can deliver a checkmate. But that is an insane, unnecessary gamble. What if the stern professor hadn't bothered to read the paper out loud? What if he just pulled a folded piece of paper out of a student's bag during an exam, assumed she was guilty on the spot, and expelled her without a second glance?
It's a huge risk.
Why risk the public spectacle?
Because Annalise understands institutional sociology, specifically what we can call the bureaucracy bypass.
Bureaucracy bypass.
Yeah. Yes. If we look at Max Weber's foundational theories on bureaucracy, we know that massive institutions like universities or corporations default to self-preservation, risk aversion, and the maintenance of the status quo.
They protect themselves.
Exactly. If Annalise had gone to the dean privately before the test to report Vanessa, what is the most likely outcome?
The university administration would sweep it right under the rug. Vanessa is the dean's assistant. She probably has legacy connections. They would want to avoid a scandal at all costs.
Precisely. If handled behind closed doors, the institution minimizes the friction. Vanessa might receive a quiet reprimand, or worse, she could spin a counter-narrative that Annalise planted it herself to frame her.
It turns into a he said, she said.
The bureaucracy protects itself first, by deliberately allowing Vanessa to confidently spring her own trap in front of a strict, methodical professor and 50 student witnesses in the middle of a heavily weighted final exam.
She forces the institution's hand.
She completely bypasses the university's ability to cover it up. She removes all plausible deniability.
The strict professor, confronted with undeniable physical evidence of premeditated sabotage in a public forum, has absolutely no administrative wiggle room.
He must act immediately to preserve his own authority in the classroom.
So Vanessa is expelled on the spot.
Annalise didn't just defeat Vanessa, she trapped the bureaucracy into executing her enemy for her. It was a carefully engineered, systemic demolition.
That is just incredible. But, when you visibly neutralize a mid-level threat like Vanessa, you accidentally send a massive flare up into the sky.
You alert the real apex predators in the ecosystem that you are a legitimate threat.
And that wakes up Julian.
Julian represents a completely different magnitude of threat.
He's not playing for grades.
No, he is the bitter, highly intelligent heir to a predatory multi-billion-dollar chemical conglomerate. He realizes that Annalise isn't just a quirky girl from a farm.
He sees the roots.
He sees she possesses strategic depth and immense underlying capital. To protect his own future dominance, he decides he must destroy her in the most high-stakes, highly visible professional arena available.
The senior capstone presentation?
Yes.
This is the ultimate proving ground. The auditorium is packed. We're talking real-world venture capitalists, industry scouts, senior faculty, and the press.
The stakes couldn't be higher.
Annalise steps up to the podium to pitch her massive project, a sustainable soil revitalization plan that merges her generational hands-on farming knowledge with high-level biochemistry.
But Julian has preemptively hacked the auditorium's audio-visual system.
So dirty.
When Annalise clicks her presentation remote, her carefully compiled data does not appear. Instead, the massive 50-foot screen flashes deeply invasive, unauthorized photographs of Annalise as a child.
It's an image of her muddy, tear-stained, and standing completely alone at her parents' funeral.
And concurrently, Julian pipes in a digitally altered voiceover that mocks her as an orphan heiress playing in the dirt.
He asks the investors if a traumatized girl who talks to cows can truly be trusted to manage a complex supply chain.
It is a breathtakingly cruel, vicious attack.
But Julian isn't just being a bully here, is he? What is the actual mechanic of this attack?
Julian is attempting a precise neurological maneuver known as an amygdala hijack.
Amygdala hijack.
Yes. In high-stress, high-stakes professional environments, if a competitor cannot defeat the logic, data, or financial modeling of your argument, they will attack your emotional regulation.
That makes total sense.
The amygdala is the part of the brain responsible for processing fear and triggering the fight-or-flight response.
So he's trying to trigger her.
Julian is using deeply traumatic visual and auditory stimuli, attempting to bypass Annalise's prefrontal cortex, her logic and reasoning center, and force her nervous system to regress.
He wants the investors to see a brilliant scientist break down into a helpless, weeping 14-year-old girl.
Exactly. If she runs off the stage or starts screaming, she loses all professional credibility instantly.
And for a terrifying second, the entire auditorium goes dead silent. Christine is in the front row, physically ready to charge the stage and just tear Julian apart.
But Annalise holds up a single hand.
She stops Christine.
She doesn't flee. She doesn't frantically mash the buttons on the podium to shut the projector off. She deliberately uses her remote to freeze the massive image of her parents' funeral right there on the screen.
She leans directly into the fire.
By freezing the image, she actively engages her prefrontal cortex. She is taking conscious control of the stimulus, stabilizing her own nervous system in real time.
She stares Julian down in the back of the room, and her voice is absolutely ice cold. She tells the silent auditorium that the specific photograph behind her documents the exact day she learned a fundamental economic truth.
Money cannot buy life.
It cannot buy rain, and it certainly cannot buy the integrity required to build a genuinely sustainable company.
She completely recontextualizes the trauma.
She turns a moment of extreme vulnerability into an ironclad statement of her core values.
And having completely neutralized the emotional hijack, she immediately transitions to the offensive. She delivers a systemic knockout punch.
She reaches into her pocket and pulls out a physical encrypted flash drive. She plugs it directly into the podium, physically bypassing Julian's network hack, and slams her real data onto the screen.
She reveals to the venture capitalist that she hasn't just been theorizing.
She has a patent.
She has successfully patented a revolutionary biological soil enzyme that actively repairs the soil microbiome.
We really must pause to understand the macroeconomic implications of this enzyme. Julian's family's empire is built on chemical fertilizers,
which operate on a forced dependency loop.
They artificially stimulate crop growth in the short term, but they strip the soil biome of its natural nitrogen and organic matter.
Exactly. This biological degradation forces the farmers to buy even more chemical fertilizer the following year just to maintain the same crop yield.
It is essentially a predatory SaaS subscription model applied to the global food supply.
Terrifying concept.
Right, but Annalise's patented enzyme breaks that loop entirely. It restores the soil's natural regenerative capacity, rendering Julian's entire multi-billion-dollar chemical empire structurally obsolete.
And as if annihilating his product wasn't enough, she casually announces to the room that since she is just a billionaire playing in the dirt, she recently used her massive inheritance to quietly execute a hostile takeover.
She secretly bought the controlling shares in Julian's father's primary distribution network.
It is total multi-vector devastation. She destroyed his product's relevance, and she bought the rows he needs to ship whatever product he has left.
I look at this sequence, and the best framework I can find for it is the strategy of a controlled burn in wildland firefighting.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
When a massive raging wildfire is bearing down on a town, the hotshot crews don't just stand there and spray water at a 100-foot wall of flame.
No, they go miles out ahead of the fire.
Exactly. And they intentionally ignite a smaller, controlled burn. They deliberately burn up all the dry brush, the timber, and the oxygen in the path of the main fire.
So when the wildfire arrives,
it hits a barrier of scorched earth, it has absolutely no fuel left to consume, and it collapses in on itself.
That's exactly what she did to Julian.
Annalise let Julian start his little emotional fire. She let him burn through all of his social capital, all of his oxygen in that room, exposing himself to the investors as a volatile, cruel liability.
By the time she dropped the real fire, the patent, and the hostile takeover, Julian had zero credibility or fuel left to fight back.
He was incinerated by his own momentum.
It is a phenomenal application of strategic patience. She allowed the adversary to fully commit to an attack vector that left his flanks completely exposed.
But wait, let's look at the reality of what Annalise just did. I love the controlled burn strategy, but she just initiated a ruthless, hostile corporate takeover.
She did.
She bought a massive distribution network in secret to deliberately dismantle a competitor's empire and choke out his supply chain. Julian is a monster, no doubt about it, but isn't Annalise operating in a massive moral gray area here?
It's a very valid concern.
We're supposed to view her as the wholesome, grounded hero of the farm, but she is deploying the exact same cutthroat, Gordon Gekko-style predatory capitalism that the elites use. Has she become the predator?
That tension is the central paradox of power. We often cling to the romantic notion that good, authentic people only use gentle, restorative methods.
Right.
But Annalise understands the brutal logic of nature.
Why?
To protect the roots, to protect the farm and the soil itself, you must sometimes operate as an apex predator in the corporate ecosystem.
She's fighting fire with fire.
She is not destroying Julian's company out of petty, ego-driven revenge. She is systematically dismantling a monopoly that is actively degrading the Earth's agricultural capacity.
She's enforcing a correction.
She is wielding the ruthless, heavy machinery of capitalism to enforce an ecological and ethical correction. Is it morally gray? Perhaps. But it is strategically flawless. She refuses to be a martyr for the sake of looking pure.
So Julian is humiliated socially, academically, and professionally. His product is obsolete and his distribution is gone. The elites have lost on every single conventional battlefield.
Utterly cornered and defeated, they reach for the final tool of the desperate.
Institutional extortion.
When a powerful entity realizes they cannot win a fair fight, they attempt to change the jurisdictional rules of the battlefield. They deploy lawyers to weaponize the legal system.
This brings us to the legal ambush. It happens during a senior ethics seminar, which is incredibly ironic.
Very.
Vanessa, who was expelled, suddenly struts back onto campus. She marches directly into the seminar classroom, accompanied by a sleek, highly polished corporate lawyer in a custom gray suit.
The lawyer announces to the professor and the class that his firm represents a massive commercial development consortium, secretly backed by Julian's family.
He drops a thick stack of legal filings right onto Annalise's desk.
He claims they have unearthed a clerical error in the county property deed from 1998.
He explains that due to this highly technical zoning error, Annalise's grandfather never actually held true legal title to the northern half of the family farm.
And just to maximize the psychological torture, Julian, who is sitting in the back of the classroom, gleefully points out that the northern half of the property includes the historic family farmhouse.
And, devastatingly, the family burial plot where Annalise's parents are laid to rest.
It is a masterclass in legal extortion. Julian clearly states the terms. He has a fleet of bulldozers scheduled to arrive at 6 a.m. the following morning to break ground on a massive, toxic chemical storage facility right over her parents' graves.
Oh my God.
The only way he will make a phone call to stop the bulldozers is if Annalise signs a legally binding document surrendering her entire billionaire inheritance to his consortium.
It is absolutely sickening. And the text notes that for the first time in the entire narrative, Annalise physically shakes. Her hands tremble.
Because this isn't about PR or grade or even a patent.
This is an existential threat to her sanctuary and her history.
Oh.
But she closes her eyes, takes a breath, and grounds herself. She reaches deep into that vintage leather satchel, and she pulls out a small, tarnished silver key.
She accesses her foundational moat.
Exactly. She walks to the front of the classroom, hooks the silver key up to the digital scanner, and projects a document onto the wall.
But it is not a digitized county deed from 1998.
Oh. No. It is the original land grant from 1865. It is written on heavy vellum, given directly to her great-great-grandfather by the state legislature.
And critically, this 1865 document contains a specific, ironclad cemetery protection clause.
A cemetery protection clause?
Yes. This clause dictates that upon the establishment of any family burial site on the premises, the land is immediately, irreversibly designated as a historical state sanctuary.
Which means it is untouchable. The state legislature's historical sanctuary designation completely supersedes and nullifies Julian's manufactured county-level zoning error.
It makes the land permanently immune to commercial eminent domain, local zoning boards, or predatory developers. It is a jurisdictional checkmate. What's fascinating here is the stark structural contrast between the two types of capital being deployed.
Yeah, let's look at that.
Julian and his sleek lawyer are relying on frictionless data. The 1998 county records are digitized. They are incredibly easy to search, easy to manipulate, and fast to deploy.
But they're fragile.
Because they are frictionless, they are fragile, they lack depth. Annalise, conversely, relies on foundational truth. She bypasses the digital API and goes straight to the physical, historical bedrock of the 1865 grant.
The Lindy effect, right?
Yes. In systems theory, this is related to the Lindy effect, the idea that the older a non-perishable thing is, the more robust it is. Julian brought a digital glitch to a fight against historical permanence.
So what does this all mean for you? If you are managing a project or building a career, think about your foundation. Julian's strategy is the equivalent of frantically reading a quick Wikipedia summary to build your entire argument in a board meeting. It's frictionless, it's fast, but the moment someone pushes back, your argument collapses.
You have nothing to stand on.
Right. Annalise's strategy is the equivalent of traveling to the physical university archive to read the primary source documents yourself. It takes significantly more time, it is heavy and cumbersome, but when the pressure is applied, your position is completely bulletproof.
And Annalise does not simply defend her position. She executes a spectacular counteroffensive.
Oh, this is the best part.
She looks at the sleek lawyer standing arrogantly over her desk and casually reveals the invisible deployment of her own capital.
She tells the lawyer that she used a fraction of her inheritance the previous afternoon to purchase the distressed debt of his specific law firm.
Because she holds their debt, she is now technically his primary stakeholder and boss.
And she fires him on the spot in the middle of the ethics seminar.
It is a stunning display of financial leverage. But we must look closely at the timeline you just mentioned.
Right, because wait a minute, she bought the law firm's debt yesterday. That changes the entire complexion of the scene.
It changes everything.
If she bought the debt yesterday, she knew exactly which law firm Julian had hired. She knew exactly what their legal angle was regarding the 1998 deed.
She wasn't ambushed at all.
She had completely neutralized the threat 24 hours before the class began, which means she intentionally let her hands shake. She pretended to be cornered. Was Annalise actually the predator here, orchestrating this entire emotional theater just so she could publicly execute Julian's legal strategy in front of an ethics professor?
She absolutely orchestrated it. We are seeing the synthesis of her two primary strategies, the bureaucracy bypass and the controlled burn.
Oh, merging them together.
If Annalise had quietly fired the lawyer over a private phone call the day before, Julian would have simply hired a different, equally corrupt firm the next week.
True.
By feigning vulnerability and allowing the ambush to occur in the classroom, she allowed Julian to confidently commit a highly illegal act of extortion in front of a tenured professor of ethics in a room full of credible witnesses.
She trapped him again.
She didn't just stop the bulldozers. She ensured Julian crossed a legal and academic point of no return.
Which perfectly sets up the climax of the narrative, the final harvest in systemic cleansing. It is graduation day.
The entire campus is gathered in caps and gowns.
The atmosphere is celebratory. But before the dean can hand out a single diploma, Silas Annalise's grandfather arrives, walking down the center aisle. He is wearing a stiff, formal suit instead of his overalls.
And he is flanked by Marcus Thorne, the disgraced former CEO of Julian's father's chemical company.
Marcus Thorne is the whistleblower. He brings the physical receipts.
During the ceremony, they reveal the results of an independent forensic audit. The audit definitively proves that Julian's father has been illegally laundering massive chemical profits through the university's supposedly pristine endowment fund for over a decade.
This reveals the true depth of the rot. The corruption wasn't limited to a few superficial legacy students like Vanessa and Julian.
The roots of the university itself, the financial infrastructure, were fundamentally compromised by predatory capital.
And the consequences are immediate. Federal security agents quietly escort Julian away in handcuffs in front of the entire graduating class. His family's empire dissolves.
And as the old hierarchy collapses, the new one takes root.
During the valedictorian speeches, Christian and Annalise take the stage together. They announce the launch of the Harvest Foundation.
They have taken the very capital the elites tried to steal and are using it to provide full-ride, unconditional scholarships for inner-city students.
Students who prioritize raw brilliance and grueling hard work over legacy connections and social pedigree.
They are actively pulling the corrupted roots out of the soil and planting healthy, resilient seeds in their place. They are changing the underlying incentive structure of the institution.
The book concludes with a deeply evocative epilogue, set exactly 1 year after graduation. We are actually provided with a visual illustration of this moment in our source material, designated as chapter15.jpg.
It's a beautiful image.
Picture this visual in your mind, because it is the ultimate culmination of their strategy. Imagine a sweeping golden sunset over a vast, vibrant green farm. On the left side of the image, you have the original rustic farmhouse.
It is weathered wood siding, a wide porch with comfortable rocking chairs, and warm, inviting light spilling from the windows.
It represents historical permanence. But built directly next to it, connected by a seamless paved stone pathway, is the newly constructed Thorn Cresian Research Center.
It is a massive, awe-inspiring, state-of-the-art facility constructed almost entirely of high-tech glass, sleek metal, and solar paneling.
Inside the glowing glass walls, you can see a diverse cohort of Harvest scholars wearing white lab coats, actively working with microscopes and advanced soil samples.
They are quite literally studying the roots.
Yeah.
They are operationalizing the metaphor.
Exactly. In the foreground of the image, Silas is back in his classic denim overalls, peacefully watering a young, fragile sapling in the grass.
And walking down that paved stone path between the historical farmhouse and the futuristic research center holding hands are Annalise and Cresian.
Annalise has completely shed her mousy, invisible persona. She is wearing a simple, elegant cream linen dress, her curls blowing freely in the wind.
Cresian's beside her in a sharp, impeccably tailored suit, looking every bit the visionary leader.
They look radiant, powerful, and deeply grounded.
The visual composition of the image is a masterclass in dual identity. It physically manifests the merging of their two worlds.
The deep historical foundation of the farm paired seamlessly with the cutting-edge, aggressive innovation of the Glass Research Center.
And if we look at the systemic outcomes detailed in the epilogue, where are their adversaries?
Total role reversal. The state governor has permanently locked in massive public funding for Annalise's organic soil systems.
And Julian.
Julian, stripped of his wealth and legacy, is working as a lowly junior clerk at a legal aid firm forced into the exact kind of unglamorous, grinding, low-status environment he used to viciously mock.
And Vanessa is failing miserably, attempting to sell authenticity as a lifestyle influencer, because the market finally recognizes she has no substance.
Meanwhile, Annalise and Chrissy are walking out to the south pasture to plant a brand new orchard.
They are building a legacy that actively grows and compounds over time.
It is the ultimate flex planting, an orchard you know will outlive you. But I have to play devil's advocate here one final time because this epilogue visual is bothering me.
Okay, let's hear it.
Let's look closely at that new research center again. It is a massive, highly visible, multi-million-dollar glass and metal facility built right next to a humble farmhouse.
Mm-hmm.
By constructing this incredibly expensive, shiny monument to their success, haven't Annalise and Cresian finally abandoned their core philosophy? Didn't they just ditch weaponized obscurity so they could finally play the exact same status game they claimed to hate? Isn't a giant glass building just the ultimate branch?
This raises an important question regarding the fundamental nature of capital allocation.
Right.
We must delineate the profound difference between spending capital on optics versus deploying capital as infrastructure.
Right.
When Vanessa purchased designer clothing, or when Julian threw lavish exclusive galas, they were engaged in purely optical spending. They were buying branches depreciating assets, designed exclusively to signal status to others.
Just showing off.
Annalise and Cresian built a state-of-the-art glass research center. Yes, it is massive. Yes, it is highly visible and expensive. But it is not a monument to their egos. It is productive infrastructure.
It's a machine.
It houses brilliant scholars, it generates new patents, it repairs the ecological damage of the state, it yields a perpetual harvest.
That makes total sense.
Weaponized obscurity was a necessary tactical shield when Annalise was isolated and vulnerable. Now that she holds structural dominance and is deeply entrenched in the ecosystem, she no longer needs to hide from the elites. She needs to build over them.
The distinction between optical signaling and productive infrastructure completely changes how we should evaluate success. And as we synthesize this deep dive into actionable insights for your own life, the core lesson from the heiress of the harvest is aggressively clear. You have to stop obsessing over the branches.
You must stop allocating your finite time and energy toward optimizing superficial metrics, chasing hollow titles, and desperately signaling your status to people who will abandon you the moment the wind changes.
Instead, channel all of that energy underground. Tend to your roots. Build habitual, unbreakable discipline like Annalise checking her satchel before every major event.
Cultivate deep foundational knowledge of your industry.
So that when a crisis hits, you can casually pull out the 1865 land grant while your competitors are frantically trying to read a Wikipedia summary from 1998.
And most importantly, practice strategic patience.
Let your adversaries exhaust themselves burning through their social oxygen while you quietly buy up the distribution network in the dark.
If we connect this to the bigger picture,
Yeah.
Annalise was able to dismantle an entrenched, corrupt hierarchy because she refused to play by their frictionless rules.
She changed the game.
She took the brutal, patient, undeniable logic of the agricultural farm and applied it directly to the hyper-accelerated world of corporate and social warfare. She understood that seasons inevitably change, hurricanes will eventually hit, and the only entities that survive the storm are those anchored deeply in the dirt.
Deep roots will always shatter shallow branches. But I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over on your commute tomorrow. We have spent this entire time analyzing how a person with deep foundational roots easily destroys a person who only possesses shallow branches. But what happens when two people with equally deep roots go to war? Imagine if Julian had been raised differently. What if he had taken his massive inheritance and instead of buying superficial status and bullying his peers, he had spent years quietly building a foundational, highly innovative empire of his own?
A terrifying thought.
If Annalise had been forced to fight an adversary with just as much strategic patience, just as much discipline, and just as much capital, how would she have won? Is pure authenticity and patience always enough to win the day, or when the hurricane hits, does survival eventually just come down to who has the most raw capital in the deepest trenches? Keep tending your roots because you never quite know what kind of monster is quietly growing in the plot right next door. Until next time, keep digging.